Joey, welcome to Guatemala. It is an honor for us to have you as a speaker at the College Freedom Forum 2025 at the Universidad Francisco Marroquin. What do you think people need to know of you firsthand?
I think obviously I would want people to know that I am a human rights activist from Hong Kong. And then secondly, I would also love for people to know that my activism is centered not just on, freedom and democracy for Hong Kong or the people of Hong Kong, but then really for all the communities that are oppressed by the Chinese Communist government and obviously other dictators across the world. I think, to understand my story, it's very, very important to understand my values behind that, which is that I believe that, a threat to injustice, to justice, anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I feel so strongly about, fighting for our collective freedom and democracy.
Well, we do want to understand your story. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you come to be this activist that wants to take a stand for something this important?
Sure. So I became an activist at the age of 20. That was back in 2019 when the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong first started. I was at the time the vice president at my university student union. So just very naturally, I got involved, in social movements, in organizing protests in Hong Kong, organizing, panels, civil discussions inside my, college campus. And just very naturally, I became this more public-facing, higher profile student activist, and unfortunately that also cost me a lot of attention, unwanted attention from the Hong Kong government, which led to endless non-stop harassment, attacks, doxing of my family members, which eventually led to me having to flee Hong Kong the year after, which is in 2020. And after that, I went to the United States where I continued my, international advocacy for Hong Kong. And last year, I, became one of the many wanted activists that is under an international warrant issued by the Hong Kong government with a $1 million bounty.
What were you studying? What was the atmosphere at the university? Some people complain that students are not that engaged, but you come through with a different story of engagement and passion and curiosity.
Yeah, so I think that's a very deep-rooted value for me. I grew up in a very strict, Asian household. My grandmother, who was the primary caretaker of me and my brother, she never allowed us to read comic books or novels. So just very naturally, newspaper became the only entertainment that I had growing up. And that was how I, got so interested in understanding what's going on in Hong Kong and what's, happening around the world. And because of that, I dreamed of, being a teacher. I wanted to teach, liberal studies, which is, the closest thing to politics in, a middle school, high school setting. So yeah, I would just say I was, that was a habit that I cultivated since a very young age. And when I got into university, I majored in politics and political science. And that really opened my eye, obviously growing up, I have so many friends who care so much about things happening in Hong Kong. But being in a college setting, that really allowed me to, broaden my horizons and see how things happening in Hong Kong is connected so deeply with things happening across the world, whether it is, our fight for Hong Kong's democratic elections or, the fight for migrant workers' rights inside of Hong Kong. That is so connected with everything else that is happening across the world. So, I met a bunch of, great classmates and schoolmates who shared the same interests, and just very naturally when the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong was about to break out, when the news, came out saying that the Chinese government is, hoping to introduce this extradition agreement between Hong Kong and China, which would eventually destruct our, independent judiciary branches and all the values that we have cherished so much. Me and my friends naturally came together and started organizing.
Do you think, you talked about the newspaper, but do you think media has a role in activism, like social networks or whatnot?
That played such a huge role, in my upbringing and over, I think, really in terms of all the, democratic movements that has happened in Hong Kong in the past. For me, myself, and for a lot of students in Hong Kong, that free copy of newspaper that you could get every morning was your sole source of, understanding, social movements in Hong Kong, understanding civil disobedience and everything that's been going on in Hong Kong. And as we, move towards with, more advanced technology, social media and media overall played such a huge role in Hong Kong social movements back in 2014 during the Umbrella Revolution. And then when I became an activist, that was in 2019, it played such a critical role. As many people would say that the movement in Hong Kong in 2019 was a leaderless one. And that was, a huge reason why our movement was so successful, because everyone was organizing on social media, and through media, we were able to broadcast our voluntarily organized protests and events to everyone inside of Hong Kong. And there are just so many things happening thanks to the spreading of this information across media, which led to the difficulty for the police to crack us down. So yeah, for sure.
Well, I somehow, I might be mistaken, I envision you as a very engaged student, debating and talking with your fellows at class, in classroom, outside the classroom. Can you give a little bit of advice of newer students coming into the university? Should they expect from the classes and the generation and the people they're with in classes?
I think definitely expect new ideas and expect that your perceptions of the world is going to change. Everyone's coming into university from very, very different backgrounds. Back in middle school and high school, you probably grow up with people, from similar family backgrounds, probably from the same region. But going into university, you're going to meet other students from different regions, from different family backgrounds who had a different, upbringing, which is, going to shape their values to become so different than yours. So at class, you're going to have debates, you're going to have discussions. Sometimes it's going to get so intense that, you're going to leave the classroom unhappy. But as you think about that and reflect on that, I think you would, really be able to enjoy the clashes between these new ideas and then open your horizon more to everything that's going around in the world.
So it's a little exercise of freedom of expression and liberty and sharing with others, and therefore we learn. So I'm very curious about that. Where do you see yourself moving forward with this struggle? What do you think youth needs to know about what you have learned and the struggle you're taking so you can have a better shot at the future?
I think, something that I constantly tell, other activists my age or, just other younger people in my community who are looking to get involved in this global struggle for freedom and democracy, or simply the struggle for Hong Kong's democratic freedom, is that, as I said many times, our destinies are really intertwined. The destinies of Hong Kongers is forever intertwined with those who are in Venezuela fighting Russia's invasion in Ukraine, and those, fighting, and the women activists in fighting in the streets of Iran. I think it is so, so, so important that we bear this in mind and think of our struggle as a global struggle and actively build that awareness and solidarity in helping each other in fighting this fight, shoulder to shoulder. And I think what I would say to young people who are looking to be part of this movement is also just to take actions. I know that as a, once young student activist myself, I understand that there are going to be a lot of uncertainties. There are going to be fear. There are going to be this feeling that you will never be able to, win against this battle against, one of the most powerful regimes in the world, which in my case is the Chinese Communist government. But I do think that once you take that tiny baby step towards making a difference, everything is going to seem so much more, easier. Once you take that tiny baby step, you will have the momentum going. And just very naturally, you're going to be able to build on that momentum and do great things.
Well, I think everybody here is here because they started with baby steps.
Yes.
So, Joey, it's been a pleasure to share with you. We hope your message reaches the whole world. Welcome to Guatemala, to College Freedom Forum 2025 at Universidad Francisco Marroquin.
Thank you so much for having me.